Hello everybody, Void here coming back at you all with another deck tech for Zendikar Rising. This time I'm going to go for something a little bit out of my comfort zone. We're going to use a mechanic that I didn't really think was that great to start out with, but I think it does have some potential. And believe it or not, I think it even has more potential than what Allies had for Battle for Zendikar and the previous Zendikar set. They were interesting, but there was just no depth. I think with this mechanic with the party, you can at least take advantage of 4 different creature types, and while it's not going to be a consistent tribal deck, with all the fancy tribal synergies that you would have if you just played with one tribe and one tribe alone, this deck does have some synergy, and I think you're gonna like it. So Zagras, Thief of Heartbeats, is a pretty cool name by the way, perfect for a vampire. 6 mana, black and red, for a 4/4 legendary vampire rogue creature. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. So your party consists of up to 1 of 4 creature types. You get clerics, rogues, warriors, and wizards. So it's kind of like if you were playing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm guessing that's where they were going with this mechanic. Hey, let's go on a little adventure. Very solid keywords. If you just ignored the rest, you would still have a decent creature. 4/4 flying, death touch, and haste. So you're going to be able to swing immediately, and I think you can easily threaten commander damage with this kind of commander. Other creatures you control have death touch though. This is something we really want to fool around with, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. It's a big part of our deck. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. This is also a nice bonus, but it's not something that was important for the deck. I think it would have been helped out more if it said just dealt damage to a planeswalker period, not just combat damage. So the way this deck is going to work, we're going to take advantage of creatures that can ping our opponent's creatures, because if they have death touch and they can deal 1 damage at least to any of our opponent's creatures that don't have hexproof, shroud, protection from the color that the pinger is, or even indestructible, that creature is going to die because Zagras gives all of our creatures death touch. But before we get into the fun part of the deck, let's go over the boring stuff. Our lands, we play about 38 of them. Feel free to add more to the land count if you want to. We're not playing a lot of card draw or ramps, so it's probably beneficial. And by the way, I do have the link to this tapped out page in the description below. So if you want to see the full list, you want to see the prices even, make your own, you know where to find it. For the most part, lands are going to be mana fixing, but we do have some pretty important ones. Arcane Lighthouse. We can pay 1 mana and tap it. Until end of turn, creatures our opponents control lose hexproof and shroud and can't have hexproof or shroud. This card is a must-have for this deck. Our entire strategy is about getting rid of our opponent's creatures. If they have Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot Boots, we can't target them with our pingers, and we want to target them with our pingers. So pay a mana and then tap this, and you should be able to do that. We have Pajuka Bog to deal with graveyards, Castle Lochthwain to help us draw more cards. We have Detection Tower, which I don't think is as good as Arcane Lighthouse, but it prevents our opponents from having hexproof. We have Shinka, the Blood-Soaked Keep. We can pay a red and tap it. Target legendary creature gains first strike until end of turn. Important with a commander that has death touch because, well, first strike and death touch means that it's going to get the hit in first and it's going to kill the creature. And that's going to do it for the lands. We do have some ramp in here. I don't want to make it seem like it's a huge deficit, but we have 8 spells that can really help us out. We have Arcane Signet, Mind Stone, Rakdos Locket, Rakdos Signet, Soul Ring, Talisman of Indulgence, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Sword of the Animist. Because we have a commander that can swing immediately, Sword of the Animist isn't really that big of a deal. Getting it out there early in a normal commander game with a commander that has summoning sickness means that you're going to have to wait to attack with it. With our commander, because he has haste, we can just pay the 2, equip it, and then we can go get a land. Very good for more combat-focused decks, which I think this could be a more combat-focused deck if you're not focused on pinging stuff. We do have 1 land search card here, an expedition map. Again, we are screwed if we can't target our opponent's stuff, so search up our Arcane Lighthouse. You know, get the land that's going to help you out the most in whatever situation. And to continue on that train of thought, we have 2 artifacts. Glaring Spotlight, which is amazing. This card is incredibly underrated. For 1 mana, it's just going to sit on the field. Creatures your opponents control with hexproof can be the targets of spells and abilities you control as though they didn't have hexproof. and you can pay 3 mana and sacrifice it. Creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn and are unblockable this turn. So this card is a must-have. And we are playing another essential card, Shadow Spear. I think this one might be even better. Very cheap, affordable equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink, which is nice, get some lifelink. But you can pay 1 mana, permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Definitely dealing with 2 problem keywords for the deck. So definitely good to have these. It means that our opponent's creatures can easily be dealt with. We do have a few party-focused cards. These are ones that specify your party. We have Coveted Prize, which is a tutor. Like Zagras, it costs 1 less to cast for each creature in our party. But if we have a full party, meaning we have a cleric, a rogue, and a warrior, and a wizard, instead of just tutoring for 1 card, we may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from our hand without paying its mana cost. So this is a pretty sweet way that we can, again, tutor up something we really need, like a Shadow Spear. Can't go wrong with this card, because then you could just play the Shadow Spear. We have Malakir Blood Priest, not super powerful, but it is a cleric, so it can count for our party. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures in your party. So our commander's a rogue. You don't have to really worry about that most of the time. So playing this means each opponent's going to lose 2 life and you're going to gain 2 life. I think in a strategy where we can easily, continuously ping our opponents, something like this could end up being like a Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Definitely a lot smaller with the impact, of course, but you need life gain in a deck like this too. We have Thwart the Grave, 6 mana, but again, it costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. You can return target creature card and up to 1 target cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you have a full party, this is just going to cost you 2 black mana to effectively bring back 2 creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think this card is insane. Very good value for potentially fewer mana. We do want to protect our commander. We want to protect some of our pingers even, or just give them haste. We have Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, pretty common. So now I'm going to go over the 4 big creature types for party, and then after that I'm going to go over our pingers. So for rogues, we have Gonti, Lord of Luxury, Grenzo, Havoc Razor, Rankle, Master of Pranks, and Zulaport Cutthroat. Again, our commander is a rogue, so most of the time we don't have to worry about not having a rogue. I will point out, however, it still counts for his cost reduction, so keep that in mind. We have 6 clerics. We have Custody Lich. Very underrated card. It enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, so it offers you some card draw as well. And whenever you become the monarch, target player sacks a creature. So if you lose the monarch and you gain it back, they have to sack another one. Very solid card. We have Demon's Disciple, which is a cleric fleshbag marauder. It just seems like we don't need any more of these kind of cards. I think we have just enough. But for standard, we're just going to see more and more of them. They're 3 mana creatures that they enter. Each player sacks a creature or a planeswalker. The only thing really important about it is that it satisfies a tribe. We have Doomed Necromancer to get back some creatures from our graveyard. Fantastic cleric for any kind of deck if you want to focus on the party or if you want to focus on cleric tribal. We have Harsh Mentor. I just like the flavor of having a red cleric in here. But it is also pretty effective in a commander game where opponents can activate a ton of abilities from artifacts, creatures, and lands. If that ability isn't a mana ability, they're going to take 2 damage. And Twilight Prophet can offer us some extra card advantage. As long as we have the City's Blessing, we can get some more cards, and we can gain some life. And we have the fantastic card, Withered Wretch. 2 mana zombie cleric, we can pay a mana to exile target card from a graveyard. It's no scavenging ooze, but for flavor reasons, it's better for this deck. And it's pretty annoying to have to deal with something like this if you run a graveyard-focused deck, because it could exile any target card. It doesn't have to be a creature, so definitely one you want to look out for. And we have a few wizards. We don't have a ton of wizards or warriors, as you can see here. We have Dream Stealer. Whenever Dream Stealer deals combat damage to a player, that player discards that many cards. Giving this Death Touch in addition to the menace that it already has means that it's going to be easier to get in with that damage. So first time around, if it's not being pumped up by something like an equipment, your opponent is probably just going to discard a card. We have Eternalize, which means it can come back. It's still a wizard. Very good for the strategy. And we have Dualcaster Mage. Always love being able to copy instants and sorceries. This can pretty much just stop a counter spell. If you want to get something else through, copy and counter spells is always good. And then we have Grim Haruspex to reward us if our creatures are dying. We at least get to draw some cards. And then we have Archetype of Aggression for warriors. Creatures we control have trample. Creatures our opponents control lose trample and can't have or gain trample. So it's always fun playing the keyword game. Keep trample away from all of our opponents. A lot of our creatures are smaller anyway, so it's good for that reason. And we have another one of those creatures, but Merciless Executioner is good because it's a warrior. We do have some draw here. We have Phyrexian Arena, Read the Bones, and Sign in Blood. You've seen these cards probably a ton before, just about every other black deck. But again, we're going to lack some card draw, so you at least want to play these. And for Death Touch Tribal, if you want to fool around with that, we have Hooded Blight Fang. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain a life. And whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a Planeswalker, destroy that Planeswalker. So it's very similar to our commander. But I really like the added life gain and a more combat-focused strategy. I think this could be even better. And now we move on to the bulk of the deck. This is so important because this is really why we're playing our commander. You want to be able to deal a damage to any creature. Because this creature has Death Touch, it's going to kill that creature. So Blood Cultist can tap to deal a damage to target creature. When a creature dealt damage by Blood Cultist dies this turn, when it's put into a graveyard, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Dagger Caster, there's more than one way to ping creatures. You don't just have to rely on activated abilities. This is the deadly synergy I think a lot of people are going to point out. It used to be before where you would have the opposite. You would have a good creature that could ping damage to other creatures, but you would need to find something like a Basilisk Collar. You would need to find some way to give that creature Death Touch, and it was always harder that way. This way I think is a lot easier because our commander gives all of our creatures Death Touch. This means when they enter, they will also have Death Touch, so it deals 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature our opponents control. Effectively being a board wipe on a creature ETB, a one-sided board wipe at that. We have the insane Deathbringer Thoktar, so whenever another creature dies, which is going to be easy to do in this deck, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. We can remove a +1/+1 counter from it to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So if you love pinging, you get rewarded for pinging by being allowed to ping even more creatures. Or if you're like me, just save them all up on this creature and then deal an insane amount of damage to an opponent. We have Dreadhorde Butcher, pretty easy to get in first attacks with this creature, so we can get a counter on it. And when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target, so going to kill something pretty easily. We have Endbringer, which is probably my favorite card in the whole deck, because it untaps during each other player's untap step, but it can tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player, so every turn this can untap with Death Touch if we have our commander out there. So we can keep killing something every turn. So we don't just have to wait for our opponent's end step before we take our turn. We can just be a little bit more aggressive with it. We have Fireslinger, deals 1 damage to target creature or player and 1 damage to you, but it's still going to serve its purpose. Also a wizard, so pay attention to a lot of these creature types. Yes, there are more creatures that deal damage, but we want to focus on the ones that satisfy the party if we can help it. We have Fury Stoke Giant, a giant warrior. So we have more warriors in here. I didn't want to make it seem like we only had to depend on 2. But Fury Stoke Giant, when it comes into play, other creatures we control gain tap. This creature deals 2 damage to target creature or player until end of turn. Also has Persist, so you get more value out of it. Again, it's the same ping idea, but we're applying it to all of our creatures on an ETB. So if we really want to go all out, this should help us out a bit. We have Goblin Chain Whirler to pretty much do the same thing as Dagger Caster. Just an insane ETB. It deals a damage to each opponent and each creature and Planeswalker they control. We have Goblin Sharpshooter, which is very close to Endbringer as far as its impact. I think it might be even more powerful, but it's up there. It's in my top 2 with Endbringer. It doesn't untap during your untap step, which is a drag, but whenever a creature dies, you untap it, so you can deal 1 damage to target creature or player. If it has Death Touch, you can just keep killing your opponent's creatures that you can target, that you can destroy. So it's just going to keep untapping. It really is brilliant. We have Jeska Warrior Adept. Taps to deal 1 damage to target creature or player, but she has haste, which is a bonus. We have Judith the Scourge Diva. Whenever a non-token creature we control dies, it's going to deal 1 damage to any target. So that ability, while it's not going to be as easy to take advantage of, it's still a way that we can ping our opponent's creatures. We have Lizalda the Blood Witch. Again, not ideal, but we can sack a creature to have her deal 2 damage to target creature. We have Mayhem Devil whenever a player sacks a permanent, so very good to pair this up with those 3 mana creatures that force each player to sacrifice a creature. Deals 1 damage to any target. We have Olivia Voldaren. If we want to settle for the Death Touch gimmick that we've been fooling around with, by all means just treat her as another pinger. However, we do have the added benefit of not killing them with Death Touch, but instead turning them into vampires first with that ability and then gaining control of them. We have Prodigal Pyromancer, a human wizard that can tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. And then we have Thornbite Staff to pretty much do the same exact thing as Goblin Sharpshooter. You want to make these creatures board wipes. You want to have that kind of devastating impact. And then we have Iridian Longbow, can pretty much turn whatever creature we have into a pinger, so we could of course equip this to our commander. We have Wojak Embermage, which is also pretty devastating, has Radiance, so you can tap it. It deals 1 damage to target creature and each other creature that shares a color with it. Pretty risky if you have to target red or black, any of those creatures, but if you're targeting blue, it's going to kill all the blue creatures, green, white, hopefully. Leave your red and black creatures alone. And to wrap up the deck, we have 8 removal spells. Again, trying to focus on taking advantage of Death Touch. We have Arc Bond. So we choose target creature whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn. It deals that much damage to each other creature and each player. It's a very good suicide card, so if you want to go and beta block out, you can then Arc Bond targeting your commander with Death Touch, so each other creature is going to die. We have Bedevil, can destroy artifact, creature, or planeswalker. We have Chaos Warp. This is also important too. We need to be able to deal with problems that our pingers can't, so this can deal with indestructible permanents. If you have to go up against an Avacyn Angel of Hope, you're not going to have a good time. We have Deadly Alliance. This is another party-focused card, but it's mostly for removal. Costs 1 less like before, but we can destroy a creature or a planeswalker. We have Feed the Swarm, which is a brilliant card in black. It's a 2-mana sorcery, but it's black's first real enchantment removal, like targeted enchantment removal. You do lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost, but it's definitely worth it if you're able to deal with enchantments in black. We have the powerful Rakdos Charm, which is the Swiss Army knife of Rakdos. It's such a good card. So many people win games because of it. You exile all cards from target player's graveyard, or you could destroy an artifact, or each creature could deal 1 damage to its controller. So you have a way to deal with combo decks that require infinite creatures to win. You can also hate on the graveyard decks. We have some synergy here in Shriveling Rot. It's an Entwined card from Darksteel. We could choose 1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, destroy it, or until end of turn, whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, that creature's controller loses a life equal to its toughness. You definitely want that last ability because we can already do the first part effectively. But if you don't have a way to give all of your creatures Death Touch, if you don't have your commander out there, but you do have some pingers, then Shriveling Rot is going to help you win the game, I think. Again, if you have the combos, if you have a Goblin Sharpshooter out there, and you're just pinging away creatures, this is something that could win you the game easily. And then the last spell is Vandal Blast to deal with all of our opponent's artifacts. Very effective red sorcery. So anyway guys, let me know what you think about Zagras, Thief of Heartbeats. Definitely a deck I'm looking forward to building and playing. Again, it's kind of like the reverse, where before you could have a good commander option that would ping damage, but you would have to find some kind of equipment that could give that creature Death Touch. This is the reverse. This is a lot easier, because instead you just have the pingers, your commander provides the Death Touch. But anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Void here, signing off. See you all next time.